Bill, it's Ben Jones from Spinifex Recruiting. I have a question for Mark. Mark, great presentation as always, and I certainly concur with 95% of that. The one comment that I would make from a person 24/7 in the recruitment market at the moment is that if our clients are not progressing to an offer after the first interview, they are losing the candidates. So that happened 3 times last week for our company with permanent recruitment, where we'd done all the work. The preferred candidates were at first interview. The clients didn't make a decision within 24 hours. The candidates were gone.
And I agree with you, Ben. It is, well, it's a massive issue. I actually see it as an amazing opportunity. So we have, because of that, we now have the ability for organisations to have unlimited psychometric assessment. So it means that they can actually put every applicant through a job fit assessment right on day one, which means that it doesn't matter how many applicants you could get 500, but you can get your top 10 straight away then, knowing exactly that they fit the role, look at their resumes, bring them in, have one interview, because I don't believe you need more than 2 interviews. Anybody that has more than 2 interviews, and especially some of these companies, and most of them are the professional firms, where they have 7 interviews or 5 interviews, it just shows a lack of decision-making capability on the part of an organisation, because if your process is good enough, you do not need more than 2 interviews. And we've just put together a program for one of our clients, which essentially is down to 1 interview, because we're using video interviewing questions to grab the look and feel of the person on the way through, and then using the psychometrics up front to essentially get rid of all the people that don't have fit for the role and only look at the ones that potentially will be great. It's just whether they have the experience, knowledge.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God, large, please.
Sorry, Tanina, you there? No. Did that answer your question, Ben?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Very helpful.
Yeah. Mike, I wonder if you could comment on something that comes to my mind, and that is, whilst getting a bum on a seat, so to speak, churn cost that comes with filling a seat. I realise we shorten people, but filling a seat with somebody just to fill the seat, and the impact that has, and perhaps the torpedo effect. Could you talk to that?
Yeah, and I hear it all the time where people say, we just had to get someone in, and I look at them, I've got to say, with absolute amazement on my face, because it is the most short-sighted way of recruiting someone that I've ever seen, because you're going to pay a massive price down the track, and the amount of management hours that's then spent trying to fix something that should not have been in there in the first place, and the amount of time that's spent on that far exceeds doing the process properly and taking an extra couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And as Ben said, it's the speed. It's the speed of the process is really important now. Top candidates, they have lots of options. They can move around. So the quicker you make it, then you will get the best quality candidates. But just putting a bum on a seat it will guarantee it will come back and bite you. And the manager will pay a far heftier price for that than they will by having someone, just quickly in there.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mike. I totally acknowledge that. Do you have any other questions from the floor?
Yeah, hi, Mark. I've got one.
Yeah, Chris?
Interested in your thoughts on the offering a bounty, a payment to existing staff for recruitment, equivalent, to part of what you might have otherwise paid to a recruiter.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Chris, because some some companies have been really successful with the employees referring their friends, so that, you know, the friend referrals, and, you know, was a Boost Juice and ones like that were really, really big on it. I guess the question you have to ask yourself is, when you look even at your own friends, let alone your employees' friends, do they always have the same values and the same attributes as yourself or as your employees? So just because they're friends doesn't mean that they're going to have the same attributes at all. In fact, the reason with our friend groups is we have a variety of friends groups, and I'm sure all of you have friends from, you know, from quite a diversity. So when you look at your role, would you say, well, any of my friends would do that really well? Well, the answer is yes. So you know, I understand. I think it's a really great way to get people in the door to look at them, as long as they're not overly committed to employing them because they're an employee's friend. Because then you've got the problem, if an employee recommends their best friend and you don't employ them, then what does that do with your relationship with your employee?
Yeah.
I've seen it be introduced into a few of our investee companies, and it's actually worked incredibly well. I don't think the issue of friends necessarily comes into it. I think most employees who are referring know that it's putting somebody into a process, know that it's to some extent they're putting themselves at risk, but hopefully, you know, you've put enough succession and planning that they're bringing people that they believe will add to the business. So I've seen it work extremely well. I haven't seen the negative side, and yeah, so I mean, it's a new tool and technique that maybe it's not that new, but it's one that I've seen work very effectively in a few examples.
Yeah, and it's not that new, but not many people do it. And I think it is a really good tool, depending on your industry for what it is. It depends on, if it's a customer service industry, then I think it's an absolutely great tool, because it's not about learnable skills and knowledge, you know, whereas, you know, if it's for a vet practice, for example, then it probably wouldn't work at all, because most of their friends wouldn't have the qualifications to do that. The only other thing, can I just add before we go into the breakout groups, is there's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation, and my belief is, I think too many people use it as a cop-out, as an excuse. They use it as an excuse why people are leaving them. The reality is, the Great Resignation is not where people are leaving you and going up and living in the hills, or going to Nimbin and living off the land. They're actually going to other jobs. They're still being employed. So it's not about the Great Resignation from work. It's about the resignation from you as a company. And that all comes back to how good your leadership teams are and your managers are to retain those people in there, because people will leave. And, you know, we know, I don't know whether there's anybody in the line that in accountancy, but there's a mass exodus of accountants out of the professional accountancy firms. And we've done our research here, and two of the reasons why they're leaving and going to commercial, so going into the banking sector, is one, they hate the billable hours system, and two, the way they see it, whether rightly or wrongly, is the only way they can progress in those organisations is they have to become salespeople as well, BD people, and they don't want to do that. And no one's addressing that.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight, Mike. Mike, if you don't mind, is there any other questions from the floor before we break out? We're right on time, and breakouts are next, Mike. Any questions, folks?
I have a quick question. Mark, great presentation. Thank you very much. How important are employee benefits in this process?
Yeah, very good question, Juliet. That is, because you've got two sides. We've got the companies that have the ping pong tables and the pinball machines and all of that, and then you've got the companies that have, I guess, more enriched benefits, which could be, you know, softer employee benefits. So my view is that I think the best benefit you get out of employee benefits is where they're more aspirational and supportive. So, you know, one of the biggest challenges I think we have is, you know, we have the ERP, you know, the employee assistance EAP programs, which are great and we need them, but there's very few programs out there to stop people from becoming anxious or to depressive. You know, we've got lots of programs out there when they fall off the cliff, you know, but that's too late. We should be doing something before that. So with employee benefits, my view is it's finding the benefits that will be valued and are actually wholesome, so that they actually mean something. So it's when the employee looks and goes, well, they put some thought into that. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but I think it is about having thought and having, you know, thinking about the individuals of what's good for them.
I think that's a wonderful way to finish, and now to go to the breakout groups and work out what's good for our businesses based on what Mark shared with us. Let's hope we can take it somewhere further. Mark, could you set the framework up around just what our objective is, please? And then we'll break out. And Jane, if you could just acknowledge who would be leading each of the breakout groups before you send us, please. Thank you.
So as I said at the start, what I'd really love is that every one of you gets at least one thing out of this morning, and so really when you go into the breakout groups, if you've got your 1, 2, or 3 things that are key for you and that you believe that you can start implementing this afternoon, then that's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see everybody go away with at least one really strong action item that they're going to implement.